What if the battle for Britain's future isn't just in Parliament, but deep below the icy waters of the North Sea, or towering above the landscape in fields of spinning windmills? What if the world's most controversial ex-president just threw petrol on the flames of the UK's most explosive debate? Green promises versus gritty, oily reality. Tonight, we're diving headlong into a crisis that's redefining Britain's economy, its political alliances, and the global race for clean energy. And the stakes? They're nothing less than who gets to choose the UK's future, the markets, the voters, or the planet itself. It started with a single post. Donald Trump, from his social media fortress, blasted Prime Minister Keir Starmer for championing what Trump derided as costly and unsightly windmills. Forget the green hype, Trump warned. Britain should get drilling in the North Sea, where, in his words, large amounts of oil lay waiting to be taken. For a nation straining under energy bills and job losses, his message landed like a sledgehammer. But this is more than an American ex-president trolling British politicians. Trump's intervention surfaced at a moment when the UK's net zero ambitions are already running headlong into economic and social realities. At the heart of it all, can Britain decarbonize its economy without destroying jobs, gutting entire communities, and handing over its energy security to foreign hands? Or is the green revolution itself a costly fantasy, doomed to stir up more resentment than results? To untangle this, we need to hit rewind. Why is Britain even pursuing net zero? And why has the North Sea become the flashpoint of a national identity crisis? Let's rewind to 2019. With dramatic fanfare, the UK becomes the first major economy to legislate a legally binding net zero target for 2050. It's hailed as ambitious leadership, the gold standard for a post-industrial powerhouse. On paper, this means the UK would cut or offset all greenhouse gas emissions by mid-century. But the path to net zero has never been simple. The North Sea, home to Britain's vast oil and gas reserves since the 1970s, still powers millions of homes, sustains tens of thousands of well-paying jobs, and anchors entire regions like Aberdeen. These are not abstract economic footnotes, they're lifelines for real families. Wind farms, solar panels, green hydrogen projects, these are the totems of Britain's promised energy transition. The government's clean growth strategy, championed in recent years by ministers like Ed Miliband, has poured billions into renewables. Ofgem, the UK's energy regulator, just reported that household energy bills are set to drop by around 7%, thanks to increased renewable production. Superficially, things seem to be working. But look closer, and the cracks are already showing. Labour's windfall tax on oil and gas profits, introduced in 2022 and juiced up in 2023 to 38%, now overshadows North Sea investments. The North Sea Transition Authority, the body policing the sector, recently downgraded its production forecast for 2028. Oil output projections slipped from 46 million tons to just 40 million. Investors are spooked, drilling activity has slumped to record lows, and 2024 alone saw a 5% drop in UK oil and gas production. The human cost is real and rising. Harbour Energy, one of the region's key employers, slashed 250 jobs in Aberdeen. Petroineos, the owner of the Grangemouth oil refinery, closed up shop, axing another 430 jobs. For communities that lived through the decline of coal, these headlines set off alarm bells. Russell Borthwick, head of the Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce, called it straight. We are sleepwalking into a future of higher emissions, imported energy, and economic decline. His warning isn't abstract policy speak. If drilling dies in the North Sea, Britain will still burn oil and gas. It'll just buy it from overseas, often from regimes with lower environmental standards. Yet for environmentalists, the argument is moral as much as economic. The UK Climate Change Committee says emissions must fall by 87% by 2040 to keep global warming in check. The green transition, they argue, is not just affordable but potentially lucrative. A recent report predicted $164 billion in benefits across British cities by 2037 if the net zero targets are met. Investors agree, at least publicly. James Alexander, head of the UK's Sustainable Investment and Finance Association, insists, investors want the UK to prioritize the transition to a green economy. Global capital, he argues, will follow the countries that lead on climate action, not those who drag their feet. But polls suggest the public is less convinced, especially when the bills hit. A Survation poll found that 68% of UK voters would rather the country produce its own oil and gas than rely on imports. Union boss Gary Smith of the GMB has been blunt. Sir Keir's net zero plan is bonkers, and there's a growing sense of betrayal among North Sea oil workers. Even former prime ministers are weighing in, deepening Labour's internal wounds. Tony Blair, in a carefully worded intervention, argued that asking Brits to make financial sacrifices when they know that their impact on global emissions is minimal is a recipe for resentment and political disaster. The backlash was instant. But Blair's words echo a gnawing fear. Will net zero survive if it means economic pain for ordinary people? On the other side, former Prime Minister Theresa May warns that delay is even worse. Delaying action will only harm the next generation and increase both the economic and social costs of climate change. It's a showdown between caution and urgency, between saving jobs today and saving the climate tomorrow. Donald Trump's explosive comments arrive at this moment of maximum tension. Britain, he declares, should drop the costly and unsightly windmills and go all in on oil, a play that's fueled America's recent economic boom. Lower energy costs have powered the American economy whilst we deindustrialize, says Nigel Farage, the ever-provocative leader of Reform UK. Farage doubled down, promising reform-controlled councils would axe net zero jobs and policies where possible. There's a deeper question swirling beneath the headlines. Has Britain's commitment to net zero become a luxury it can no longer afford? Or is backing away now the real recipe for disaster, one that would turn Britain into an energy backwater as others cash in on the green boom? The situation on the ground is a tangle of numbers, fears, and political stakes. The North Sea industry warns there's still a century of drilling left, with Aberdeen as the beating heart. Christopher Wheaton, an energy analyst at Stifel, doesn't mince words. The UK North Sea industry is being destroyed by taxes that are too high. He points to the windfall tax as an investment killer. Others, including David Latton, chairman of Serica, see the inappropriate fiscal environment as a heavy drag, leading to falling domestic production. But critics of more drilling say the world's carbon budget is finite. Every new well makes it harder, maybe impossible, for the UK to hit its climate promises. The Scottish government, led by the SNP, has declared a presumption against further North Sea exploration. Meanwhile, some in Westminster, like Kemi Badenoch, openly admit the 2050 net zero target is impossible without economic pain. So what's the real cost of Britain's green ambitions, and who pays it? More to the point, who benefits and who loses as the country races, or limps, towards its net zero destiny? Let's pull apart the moving pieces of the crisis. First, Labour's windfall tax, intended to claw back record oil and gas profits, may strand up to 1.5 billion barrels of oil in the North Sea. That's not just lost revenue for companies. Taxes from these barrels fund public services, underpin jobs, and prop up local economies. Investors are already voting with their feet, with capital fleeing what's seen as a hostile environment. At the same time, renewables face their own headwinds. Despite the price drop in household energy bills, the upfront costs of new wind and solar arrays remain high. Projects require stable, predictable policy support, hard to maintain in an atmosphere of political infighting. Opposition parties sense blood, promising voters an end to what they call ideological war on the North Sea. And as the oil giants retrench, the skills, equipment, and expertise built over decades risk being lost for good. Critics warn that turning off the taps too quickly could cripple not just the regional economy, but the UK's energy independence. On the international stage, Britain's leadership on climate is at stake. With the US oscillating between green goals and oil booms depending on who's in power, and the EU pushing ahead with its own green plans, the UK risks becoming isolated, caught between a populist backlash at home and fierce competition abroad for new green investment and skilled jobs. All the while, the climate clock is ticking. Every year of delay adds pressure. Sam Hall of the Conservative Environment Network argues, Badenoch's speech undermines the significant environmental legacy of successive Conservative governments. For Hall and others, this isn't just policy, it's about the UK's place in the world, its moral responsibility, and its economic future. So the conflict has become existential. Do you double down on Britain's legacy as a fossil fuel giant, drilling the North Sea for all it's worth, as Trump and Farage advocate? Or do you gamble on net zero, hoping that bringing households and industry along for the ride will deliver jobs, cheaper energy, and climate credibility? Or is this a false choice, one that ignores the need for a pragmatic, gradual transition that balances fossil fuels and renewables, jobs and climate, politics and economics? The answer could decide not just the next election, but Britain's fate for generations. And just as the arguments reach fever pitch, another tremor. Fresh data shows UK oil and gas production has plummeted for a second consecutive year, while job losses mount and investment dries up. Meanwhile, a new survey hints at a surge in public skepticism about net zero's costs. Has the debate already tipped beyond the point of no return? Or is this the moment for a bold new compromise that could rescue both Britain's economy and its environmental ambitions? In the next chapter, we'll confront the possible futures Britain faces, and whether there's any off-ramp from this gathering storm. So, as Britain stands at this volatile crossroads, the stakes could not be higher. What happens next will not only define its energy future, but could send shockwaves throughout global climate policy and the wider economy. Let's break down the possible scenarios, the risks and rewards, and the hard choices Britain faces over the next decade, and what this all means for you, wherever you live. Imagine three diverging paths stretching out from the decisions made today. Each offers a radically different future. First, the green acceleration. Here, the UK decides to double down on renewables. Massive government investment pours into wind, solar, storage, grid upgrades, and retraining programs, not just in London, but in places like Aberdeen, Leeds, Grangemouth. North Sea oil is phased down rapidly. The goal? Cement Britain as an international leader in climate solutions. The upside? British households get cleaner air and, over time, cheaper energy bills, just as Ofgem predicts a 7% fall thanks to more renewables. The global climate community cheers. In 6 urban centers alone, the national net zero push could deliver $164 billion in benefits by 2037, a staggering sum. But the risks loom large. Job losses in oil towns are immediate and painful. Political backlash intensifies. Tony Blair's warning echoes. You can't ask the public to sacrifice their finances and lifestyles when, in their view, Britain's emissions are a tiny slice of the global pie. We're sleepwalking into a future of higher emissions, imported energy, and economic decline, warns Russell Borthwick of the Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce, a reminder that going green too fast might mean simply importing more oil and exporting jobs abroad. Now picture the second scenario, the pragmatic balance. Here, Britain walks a tightrope, refusing to abandon either climate promises or economic security. The government keeps North Sea oil and gas production ticking over, using tax proceeds to steadily ramp up renewables and fund vital retraining. New technologies like carbon capture, hydrogen, and battery gigafactories get cautious, but real, investment. Offshore wind expands, but so do programs to keep energy costs stable for families. Emissions fall, but more slowly than environmentalists want. Political tempers cool, if only a little. This is perhaps the least glamorous road, but it addresses the hard facts. 68% of UK voters, according to Survation, would rather produce oil and gas at home than import it. Investors are watching closely. We want to see the UK prioritize the transition to a green economy, emphasizes James Alexander of the UK Sustainable Investment and Finance Association. Fumble this balance, and the country risks alienating both Wall Street and Westminster, undermining investment and public trust alike. And the third road? Call it the fossil fuel revival. Succumbing to pressure from domestic unrest, populist voices, and perhaps persuasive tweets from Donald Trump, the government slashes green spending. Windfall taxes go, oil drilling soars, environmental rules are relaxed. Aberdeen booms, for now. The public revels in marginally lower energy bills, at least until market shocks or collapsed investment catch up. Britain's climate leadership evaporates. The EU and UN turn up the heat. Meanwhile, youth movements and global investors look elsewhere for climate innovation. Even staunch industry defenders like Christopher Wheaton warn that short-term gain may bring long-term instability. The UK North Sea industry is being destroyed by taxes that are too high, but without a plan for transition, we risk destroying it for good. Which path will Britain choose, and is any single answer truly viable? The truth is, the future will likely be messier and more unpredictable than any scenario can capture. Political winds can shift overnight. Energy markets are global, shaped by conflicts far from the North Sea. And, as former PM Theresa May warns, delaying action will only harm the next generation, increasing both the economic and social costs of climate change. But the lesson is clear. Delay or indecision is itself a choice, with costs that don't stay hidden for long. For regular Britons, the consequences might feel abstract until they suddenly aren't. Lost jobs in Aberdeen reverberate down the supply chain to dozens of towns. Policy shifts affect your energy bill, your taxes, even the air you breathe. For those overseas, what Britain decides sends political signals, either emboldening climate action elsewhere or handing ammunition to those eager to slow down the global transition. But let's get practical. What does this mean for you? First, it's about understanding that every energy decision is a trade-off. Wind farms might drive down bills, but building them can spark local outrage. Oil and gas bring local jobs, but also global warming. Tax incentives, like the much-debated windfall tax, can fund vital infrastructure or drive away investment. Next time you read a headline about energy policy, ask, who benefits? Who loses? Is the short-term pain worth the long-term gain, or the other way around? Second, the economic opportunities hiding in the green transition are real. Cities investing in climate solutions, retrofit programs, new grid tech, clean industry are already attracting investors and jobs. As reported, the right policies could make British cities $164 billion richer by 2037. That's not a prediction, it's an opportunity. The challenge is to make sure the people who lose out, whether in the North Sea or elsewhere, aren't left behind. That means retraining, safety nets, and honest conversations about what change really costs. Third, and perhaps most importantly, the era of climate action being somebody else's fight is over. Whether you're a voter, a business owner, or just someone worried about your heating bill, these battles shape your future. Political infighting over net zero, disagreements between Westminster and Aberdeen, even the tweets of Donald Trump, all of it affects the economy, environment, and public trust. As union leader Gary Smith put it, there's a growing sense of betrayal among North Sea oil workers. We need a plan that doesn't abandon communities. Where does this leave us? Is there a path that keeps the lights on, jobs secure, and the air clean? A way to balance green ambition and economic security without ripping the fabric of British politics? While the risks are real, so are the rewards of getting it right. The green transition is not just about sacrifice, but about redefining economic leadership for the 21st century. Countries that master this balancing act will be the first to attract new industries, fresh investment, and future-proof jobs. The UK, with its long history of industrial innovation and a restless public hungry for stability, could lead the world once again. Or it could hesitate, fracture, and watch as others take the prize. The answer to our opening question, can Britain chart a pragmatic path balancing green commitments and economic security, or is it heading for a fracture, is this: it's still possible, but only with tough, honest compromise and a willingness to look past political point scoring. Success won't come from swinging wildly between extremes, but from building policies that combine ambition, realism, and care for those caught in the transition. Here's a final, little-known fact. As of 2024, UK oil drilling is at a record low, but investments in new clean energy technology are at record highs. The secret? Both trends can exist, and might even reinforce each other, if guided by clear policy, smart investment, and public support. Britain's future is not locked in. Its fracture is not inevitable. The tools to build a resilient, green, and economically secure country are on the table. The only question is, will leaders and the public use them? So what can you do? Stay informed. Scrutinize the promises and the numbers behind every net zero plan and every oil tax debate. Support policies and leaders that acknowledge complexity instead of hiding it. And, if you're in the UK, make your voice heard at the ballot box, in your community, and online. Because whether Britain fumbles or flourishes in its next big chapter won't just affect the North Sea or Downing Street, it could shape the very future of the global energy transition. If you found this breakdown helpful, please hit like, subscribe, and